Hello, BookTube. It's time for another mail haul. As a bit of a distraction, a distracting mail haul. I, I confess. Just entre nous. On Election Day here in the United States, I made the decision to no longer look at the national news, no longer look at the political news. I went to my Google News feed on my iPad where I read all my news, uh, and changed my category picks. Just removed all of the national and political news that I'd been watching, like everybody else, feverishly for the previous year. Uh, and the endless stream of magazines that I subscribe to, it's rather out of control. They're all, a lot of them are political and social commentary magazines like the New Yorker, the New Republic, Harper's, the Atlantic. And after Election Day, I made the conscious decision to completely avoid even looking at the political content. So I would literally get a magazine in the mail that I subscribed to, and I would just start flipping pages. I would get to the spot where the back of the book, the so-called back of the book, happens, where a totally nonpartisan, usually a totally nonpartisan literary editor has been hired to add the the book reviews and the movie reviews and the cultural essays to the back of the magazine. Usually not politically skewed. Usually just people like me, for hire freelancers who are looking for any venue. You hope that it's not a fascist venue, and if you're well positioned, if you're fairly secure, then you can just say no. You can avoid pitching to those people, so that you don't have to have your work in the back of the Daily Stormer or whatever. And even though the Boston Irish Catholic in me hated the waste of it, I could hear my sainted ma's voice saying, "You subscribe to that and you're leaving half of it out." I didn't want to look at it. The written part in my magazines, the news updates on my iPad, I just didn't want to look at it. And it's worked. It's kept me from a lot of bootless agita in the course of any given day. But I have to admit, and I do it with a smile on my face, just because after a certain point, when you're teetering on the brink of Armageddon, after a certain point, you have to smile, or you'll just go insane. You'll literally go insane. But I have to admit, the last 2 weeks, I haven't changed my mind. I haven't been reading the front halves of those magazines, and I haven't changed my Google News alerts back to the way they were. I am still avoiding national news, but when it's saturation point, it's really hard to avoid it. I mean, I am on Twitter, after all. And it's dire. It's ghastly. It's just like, it's so much worse than even I anticipated it would be this early. It's really, it would be comical. I mean, I'm laughing. And I would say that the national situation in America in the early part of 2017 is comical, except for one thing. It's going to get us all killed. And that's going to happen soon. Maybe not all of us. A major change in the way the world works is going to happen as a result of this farce, and everyone's going to get caught in it. It's not enough for you smug Canadians. I admit you have reason to be smug. I admit you do. You have a calm, civilized, beautiful country. You have a gorgeous country leader. Everything about you is sane. But when you get onto Twitter or onto the Facebook or wherever, and you say, "I'm glad it's not our problem," you're being a bit naive. A Canadian trait, I admit, but still. when the national leadership of the most powerful nation in the world, the linchpin of the world economy, and also the possessor of hundreds of active nuclear warheads on land and at sea, has fallen into clown car disarray, everyone is in danger, not just Americans. You probably saw on the news, there's been confirmed reports of Russian spy submarines off the east coast of the United States, well inside treaty boundaries. Russia also fired a missile, an intercontinental ballistic missile of the type you might use to, I don't know, say, nuke Washington. They've signed 10 treaties not to do that. It's totally an abrogation of their treaty rights to do that. And the retaliation that's right there in the treaty is economic sanctions, sometimes crippling economic sanctions of a type that work. But they only work if you impose them. If your president is dead set against it, then... And also, I'm sure you saw in the news that also in the same period of time, the same 3 days, North Korea fired a totally illegal intercontinental ballistic missile of a type that they could use to, I don't know, nuke Seoul. And the whole thing reminded me of something that I saw years and years ago, long before most of you were born, in the Masai Mara in Africa. My dogs and I came across a mess, and they were just going. This was 7 beagles and a bunch of strays, a bunch of mangy strays, and my beagles were just going nuts, telling me what their sense of smell was telling me. I could smell something. I could see something, that there had been some sort of conflict on the veldt where we were. They were going nuts. They were telling stories about fresh blood, about something else that they couldn't identify to me, but that obviously was intestines. And later on that day, we actually saw the result of that. We saw a wounded lion being mobbed by 3 much younger lions, by 3 yearling male lions. One of them would go in for a swipe or a bite. The wounded lion would turn. The wounded lion had obviously been fighting with someone else and had survived. Who knows if his opponent did? I didn't see a body. But had received wounds in the process and had, limped off. That was what my dogs had been smelling. And one of these young lions would go in for a swipe. The wounded lion would turn, growl, swipe, and return. He was nearly twice their size. And when he did that, another of the 3 would come in somewhere else. And then the third. And the whole thing it was very loud and it was very violent and it sort of moved off. It was moving the whole time. And I, of course, wasn't letting my dogs anywhere near it. I wasn't going to get anywhere near it. We saw it from a distance and then it moved out of sight. And I never went to see the result the next day. The result is self-evident. And I'm reminded of that incident when I get even my accidental exposure to U.S. news this week, because those younger lions, when they saw the older, more powerful lion wounded and vulnerable, did not say, well, he's just having a bad day, but he's been really powerful in the past, so we'd better not attack. That's not what jackals and predators do. That's not how they think. They look for weakness, and the minute weakness happens, they strike. They don't say, well, he's down now, but if he gets his crap sorted out, we could be in trouble for attacking. No. Opportunistic militarism is a total gambler's game. And if you are an opportunist, you strike when the iron's hot. You don't wait, and you don't weigh. Which is a long and pointless political digression that is meant to, as a segue to, I can't help but be exposed to this stuff now, a little, even though I don't want to be. And therefore, you're going to love this, it's so smooth, and therefore I'm all the more thankful for books. I know, that was cheesy. But count your blessings, because in a year I won't even bother with the segues. Which is a long prologue way of saying I have a mail haul. The phone says this is 9.5 minutes. That's the length of most of your videos. And that was all throat clearing. Oh, God. I don't know how you put up with me. But anyway, that really was my overall point, was that I take greater solace than ever from the fact that I can lose myself in books. I don't believe it's going to be possible for long, for any of us to lose ourselves in books, but I can right now, and I can share it with you. So that's what we're going to do. That's my story anyway. So we'll start with this. We don't actually have a box this time around, but that's all right. Some of these packages are big. So, I'm leaving out here, in this pack, the one that I already opened was my Kirkus book, my Kirkus assignment for, I think, early March. That I'm leaving out because the minute I even glanced at it, it's just, I do Kirkus. For those of you who are new to the channel, I noticed some of you are. We got past 2,600. It's incredible. I review books for the indie branch of Kirkus Reviews. So those reviews are anonymous. They aren't part of the Georgia Creeper ubiquity of Steve's reviews everywhere in the world. They are still there. And in some books, when you see a Kirkus review, it will be mine. But the one I got today, it was a 200-page thing, self-published by a pastor in Florida. It's always a pastor in Florida. I don't know what it is about Florida. And it was a prosperity gospel book. It was here are the 15 steps to getting the money that Jesus wants you to have. And I read the first chapter. I will have to read the whole thing. I will review the whole thing. I'm well ahead of schedule for Kirkus, so I will do this week. But I don't know what to say when I get books like that, and I get them a lot at Kirkus. I don't know what to say to Christians who subscribe to that kind of garbage. I honestly don't. You are not in the position of a Taoist, for instance, or where there's so much that's innuendo that you can't put your foot down anywhere. You're also not in the position of a vanished religion, like Mithraism or something, where we don't know what the dictates of the God in question were. Your Messiah, you're the Son of your God himself, a triune God, could be maddeningly diffuse on all sorts of points about human life. There are many times in the Gospel of Luke where I wanted to say, hey, again with the parables, why don't you just say what's on your mind? But there are a couple of unavoidable facts, and one of the most unavoidable things about your Messiah, about the founder of your religion, regardless of what anybody has said after that, presumably what he said matters most. And he was approached by a rich man who said, what must I do to achieve salvation, to be one of yours? And without any hesitation, he said, go and sell everything you have and give it to the poor. Then come and follow me. Jesus Christ himself offering you to come and follow me when he is, as Robert Bolt puts it, personally present here on earth. And the rich man did not. And Jesus said to his followers, more difficult for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, you will hear all sorts of Christian apologists. They've been doing it for 2,000 years because Christians love money. You will hear all sorts of them say, well, it's actually an arcane reference to the eye of the needle is actually one of the small old gates of the old city of Jerusalem, and camels had to go in on their knees. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that. No. No. The meaning is plain on its face. Jesus was disparaging a man who chose riches over faith in him. And that's totally unambiguous. If you're a Christian, there is simply no way around that. You have to start talking about the old gate of Jerusalem, because otherwise, your Lord and Savior was completely explicit about your relationship to money. He didn't say tithe. He said give everything to the poor and come and follow me. That's a tough thing. Anyway, oh God, it's another 10-minute digression. My point there was, there's no reason for me to show you that Kirkus book. I will read it, I will slap it around a little, and I will collect a checky poo. But the rest of these, now we will do the book haul. Let's start right away before I get another bee in my wallet. What have we got here? The Night Ocean by Paul Lafarge. Look at that beautiful cover. You are getting sleepy. Listening to me, you probably are getting sleepy. Let's see here. This comes out in early March. Inspired by the lives of H.P. Lovecraft and his circle, a riveting novel about secrets, scandals, psychiatry, and pulp fiction. Award-winning novelist Paul Lafarge is back with his most dazzling book yet. Slow down there, Seymour. I'll quite literally be the judge of that. Now, don't dazzle me with your dazzles. A many-layered literary mystery about identity, obsession, and science fiction fandom. Identity, obsession, and science fiction fandom. Somebody accidentally left virginity out of that list. Psychiatrist Marina Willett has a problem. Her husband Charlie is obsessed with the life of the legendary horror writer H.P. Lovecraft, in particular with one mysterious episode. In the summer of 1934, the old gent lived for 2 months with a young fan named Robert Barlow and his family in Central Florida. Again with Florida. And also, her husband's psychological obsession is not her problem. Okay? Lovecraft was 43 years old that summer, and Barlow only 16. Sounds right to me. What were the two of them up to? Were they friends or something more? Cthulhu comes calling. Just when Charlie thinks he's solved the puzzle, a scandal erupts and he disappears. The police say it's suicide, but Marina doesn't believe them. She pieces together Charlie's trail in an attempt to uncover the truth about Lovecraft, Barlow, and what exactly her husband found. Okay, well, I kind of like the sound of that. So early March. Early March is too late for me to pitch this anywhere, but it's never too late for me to review it myself. Who is Paul Lafarge when he's at home? He's the author of the novels The Artist of the Missing, Houseman, or The Distinction. Oh, I know that. I read that one. And Luminous Airplanes. Didn't read that. As well as The Facts of Winter, a book of imaginary dreams. Okay. All right. The Night Ocean. Very good. And then we move on. I can take my time by this point because I don't think any of you are still there. It's booktube as psychotherapy. Okay, might want to have sprung for a bigger envelope here so that I don't have to disembowel it, but that's okay. Blue Light Yokohama by Nicholas Obregon. Another nice cover. Reinstated to the homicide division and transferred to the precinct in Tokyo. Inspector Iwata is facing superiors who don't want him there and a reluctant partner, Noriko Sakai, who'd rather work with anyone else. After the previous detective working the case killed himself, Iwata and Sakai are assigned to investigate the slaughter of an entire family, a brutal murder with no clear motive or killer. At the crime scene, they find puzzling ritualistic details, black smudges. Could just mean Deb had been there. A large, strange incense smell. Again. And a symbol, a large black sun. Iwata doesn't know what the symbol means, but he knows what the killer means by it. I am here, I am not finished. So is this Nicholas Obregon? Did he do this? Okay, this is a new book. Who's Nicholas Obregon? A British-Spanish dual national who grew up between London and Madrid. He has worked as a steward at sports stadiums, an editor in legal publishing, and a travel writer. He fell in love with Japan while on assignment for a magazine, and this is his debut novel. How interesting. Okay, so Blue Light Yokohama. Let's move on. This here. What have we got next? What have we got next? Oh, more fiction. All fiction. This is The Weight of This World by David Joy. That is a rusty trailer. So I think we're going to get what I dubbed decades ago Hicklit, where we get the down and out, the tank top wearing, whiskey drinking men's men, women's women, with the assumption being that is where truth lies in life, and that being disappointed because you got to your local newsstand and they are out of the latest issue of the New Yorker, which had a piece you really wanted to read, is virtually satanic. Anyway. All right, so his debut novel was Where All the Light Tends to Go. I did not read that. I think I got it, but I didn't read it. It garnered widespread acclaim among critics. What do they know? So let's see, what is this one? Aidan McCall and Tad Broom have been inseparable friends since childhood, both childhoods marked by violence and neglect. When he was 12, Aidan watched his father slaughter his mother, then commit suicide. Tad was all but abandoned by a single mom who wanted nothing to do with him, a chronic reminder of the worst time in her life. Now in their mid-20s, the two young men survive by illegally stripping the valuable materials out of foreclosed houses under cover of night. The rest of the time drinking, scoring meth, or oxy, to ease the pain of living. For Tad, that pain and the addiction it has engendered arose after a tour of duty in Afghanistan that left him injured and haunted by demons. Okay, so it's not upper middle-class Connecticut divorce. It's Hicklet. It's pure and simple meth cooking Hicklet. We'll just see if it's any good. Sometimes it is. I've read it where it's done well. This also comes out on March 7th. Okay, and our author, he lives in Webster, North Carolina. He has rotten hipster taste in hats, and he does a fairly representative number of push-ups every day. Okay. I don't actually know where that roulette wheel stops. Let's just move on. Gotta confess, as worthy as some of these things seem, as interesting as some of these things seem, I am kind of hankering for an Ottoman Empire history. This is my channel, after all. Oh, all right. Well, even better. Okay. All right. This is by Thomas Oliphant and Curtis Wilkie, and this is The Road to Camelot, inside JFK's 5-year campaign. Okay. This comes out in May. The story begins even before Kennedy's failed attempt in 1956 to win the vice presidential nomination, and charts his bold race to the presidency. Acclaimed award-winning journalists Tom Oliphant and Curtis Wilkie provide a comprehensive account of the Kennedy campaign. The authors have examined more than 1,600 oral histories at the John F. Kennedy Library. They've interviewed surviving sources, including JFK's sister Jean Smith, and drew on Okay, that's okay. All right, it's just a tense problem. That's all. They've interviewed, and drew. You're changing from one kind of the past tense to the other. On contemporaneous interviews with insiders, including Ted Sorensen and Arthur Schlesinger. Interesting. Okay. The campaign, in fact, that picture, the campaign took place in a hotel directly across the front door, from the front door of my library. And this was the famous presidential campaign in which Jack Kennedy's father, Joe Kennedy, brayed that he was going to sell his son like cornflakes and then poured money into the campaign. They tried so many dirty tricks. Oh my God. Dirty tricks from old ward Boston politics of a previous century. Like if you're running against an opponent, spend $250 to hire 5 other guys with that guy's name, have them all run so that your people don't know who to vote for, and there's nothing you can do about it. But Jack Kennedy rebelled against the idea of being handled like cornflakes, and this could tell that story. That would be very interesting. That's a very good story. It's I don't mean to besmirch oral histories at the Kennedy Library, but it's a story that has been exhaustively told in the past. This book, well, I don't know. It'll add some interview details. I don't think it'll be revelatory in any way. It'll just come down to how well it's done. I'm all for it. Then we move on. We're almost done. Don't worry. What's this next one? Oh, God. Okay. This is Other People, Takes and Mistakes by David Shields. Which is, well, I think it's probably a collection of essays. It has a Steve bugaboo right away in that it has 2 titles. The book only has 1 title. It has 1 author and 1 title. Okay? But anyway, let's see what we have here. David Shields has done it again. That can be interpreted a couple of different ways. I'm relatively certain, 50% certain, that when I finish reading this book, I too will say, David Shields has done it again. Other People, Takes and Mistakes. Who knows what the title is? He explores the concept of otherness, the need for one person to understand another person completely. Can any one person know another person? How do we live through other people? Is it possible to fill the gap between people? These are questions that primates ask. Dogs don't. Grappling with these questions, David Shields gives us 70-plus short essays that add up to a fascinating meditation on otherness. Do they really? Or are they 70-plus essays you did for money, without ever thinking of connecting them to one to the other, much less making them in grand toto a, what was it again? Fascinating meditation on otherness. The book is divided into 5 sections: men, women, athletes, performers, alter egos. Sounds to me like a string of deadline prose collected in a book. Let's see if that happens to be true, shall we? Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, my. That paragraph there that's absolutely immense is the thank yous for all the places where these things originally appeared. Indeed. Over the course of years. So I wonder, the whole time they were meditations on otherness? All right, so David Shields, in case I'll read this to you in case any of you are still here. He's the author of 20 books, including Reality Hunger, which was named one of the best books of 2010 by more than 30 publications, and which I virulently hated. Virulently hated it. The recipient of a Guggenheim and an NEA fellowship, Shields has published essays and stories in the New York Times Magazine, Harper's, Esquire, the Yale Review, Salon, Slate, McSweeney's, and The Believer. Okay, well, all right. So this is gonna be another 7th of May arrival time here. Oh, he's doing readings all over the Northeast, doing readings everywhere in the country. Okay, all right. But when does the book come out? So I want to know. Does it have another sheet here? No. A pub sheet with no date on it. I have a list of tour dates. There's a book list review, starred review, book list, or reprint of a Kirkus review, reprint of a Publisher's Weekly review. Okay, so I don't know when this comes out. Probably February or early March. But that's other people, takes and mistakes. Admit it has a bit of weight against it, but you never know. It could end up pleasing. Let's see what this last one is. This is the last one, and I'll stop haranguing you. What have we got here? Proving Ground by Peter Blauner. I could swear I've already read this. Did I get this from NetGalley? An old school page turner. Taut narration, spot on dialogue, sharply etched action sequences make this a must read. I couldn't put the sucker down. A blurb by Stephen King. Mm-hmm. Yep. Also has blurb by Dennis Lehane and Richard Price. So what is... Couldn't put the sucker down. Yeah, so what is this? Nathaniel Dresden is an Iraqi war veteran, unable to notice how that's turning up in all the books now, Afghan and Iraqi war veterans. Unable to leave the violence of his time overseas behind, returning to a law career isn't working for him. A death in the family brings him back to Brooklyn. His father, David Dresden, was a controversial activist who defended many criminals and won the ire of every cop in New York City, until one night in Brooklyn's Prospect Park when David was gunned down. Sifting through the records of his father's life and work, Nathaniel finds signs of a plot against his father, and also of the danger he could be in if he tries to unmask the killer. Huh. I wonder what effect on thrillers of this kind ubiquitous surveillance will have. Like, for instance, Prospect Park. I don't know when this story takes place. I assume it's in the present day. But Prospect Park is now on camera. Almost every corner of it is on camera 24 hours a day. I guess it's not night vision. If you shoot somebody, if you gun them down at night, still a lot you can glean from that. Like, and anywhere you go in metropolitan America, you're on camera. And that feed never goes away. I wonder how that will affect thrillers. You know, I mean, what we're told here is sifting through the records of his father's life and work. That's what Nathaniel has to do. That's his first and only step to solving the murder of his father. Not contacting the right people to pull the feed from a nearby traffic camera, from a nearby intersection camera, from a park camera. I'm interested to see. Probably that's already started to filter in to thrillers, and I just don't know it because I just don't read enough thrillers. I'll have to find out. Or those of you who do read a lot of thrillers, feel free to let me know. Are you seeing that crop up? I know we're seeing crop up Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. That kind of thing is becoming ubiquitous in fiction. But what about surveillance stuff? When a novel isn't about surveillance, is that starting to become the background noise of these books, the way cell phones were 20 years ago? Where I remember when I started to think, well, okay, isn't it going to radically change the nature of mysteries and thrillers if people have phones with them all the time, especially phones with cameras? And it hasn't particularly done that, and it should. I don't think I've read more than 2 or 3 mysteries or thrillers in the last 10 years that turn on that, and they should. It's no good for you as a writer to second guess that technology rather than embrace it. But now I'm curious to know about surveillance stuff. Is that cropping up? But anyway, I've just gone on long enough. So proving ground. Couldn't put the sucker down. Ever call anything a sucker when you're not writing a blurb for money? I don't know. Other People by David Shields. The Road to Camelot, a pure Steve book if ever there was one. I will cry crocodile tears to my various editors to let somebody let me review this for a huge audience. The Weight of This Push-Up, The Weight of This World. Blue Light Yokohama. And The Night Ocean by Paul Lafarge. There we go. Mostly fiction, but still a very good haul. A Limping Lion book haul. Remember that from like 2 hours ago? Sorry, BookTube. Thank you, BookTube.